Motown was called the sound of young America, and it was. But behind the sequins and the choreography and the Hitsville USA sign, there were real people who built that sound with their bodies and their voices, and walked away with almost nothing. Tonight, 12 of them, their songs, their stories, and the real cost of making the music that changed the world.
Don't you know?
Number 12, Barrett Strong. Before there was a Motown sound, there was Barrett Strong. Before Diana Ross, before Marvin Gaye, before the Supremes or the Temptations, there was a 19-year-old from Nashville, Tennessee, playing piano and singing a song about wanting money that became the first major hit in Motown's history. Money, That's What I Want hit number 2 on the R&B chart and number 23 on the pop chart in early 1960. For a label operating out of a converted house in Detroit for barely a year, it was the commercial breakthrough that proved the whole enterprise was viable. Without that record breaking through, the question of whether there would even be a Motown to house the Supremes, the Temptations, and Stevie Wonder is a genuinely open one. Strong never had another significant solo hit. He pivoted to songwriting, working with Norman Whitfield on records that define an entire era of American music. I Heard It Through the Grapevine, War, Papa Was a Rollin' Stone, Just My Imagination, Psychedelic Shack, Ball of Confusion. Across the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Whitfield-Strong team wrote a body of work that rivals any songwriting partnership in soul music history. And yet Strong spent decades fighting for acknowledgement that he co-wrote Money itself. Gordy had registered the song in ways that obscured Strong's contribution, and Strong spent years seeking the writing credit and the royalties that should have been his from day one.
The best things in life are free.
He told journalists the industry's relationship with its black artists, even the ones who literally started the whole thing, was one of perpetual underpayment. Barrett Strong died in Detroit on January 29, 2023. He was 81 years old. The song that launched Motown was the only major solo hit he ever had. Barrett Strong gave Motown its first commercial proof of concept. Without him, the whole story starts somewhere else. That is the scale of what he contributed and what he was underpaid for.
But what it don't get, I can't use, I need more.
Number 11, Georgiana Tillman.
Please, Mr. Postman.
In November 1961, Please, Mr. Postman reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the first Motown record to ever top the pop charts.
Mr. Postman, hey, hey, hey.
The song was performed by a group of teenage girls from Inkster, Michigan, who had auditioned for Motown on a whim after their friend chickened out at the last minute. Gladys Horton sang lead. Georgiana Tillman, 17 years old, sang harmony behind her.
Is there a letter for me?
Georgiana Marie Tillman was making Motown history while simultaneously fighting a battle most people around her didn't fully know about.
Whoa, yeah.
She suffered from both sickle cell disease and lupus, two painful, debilitating, incurable conditions at the same time from early in her life. The Motown system was not equipped to support an artist managing this level of illness while maintaining a professional performing schedule. She continued performing, continued recording, continued being one of the voices behind Motown's early hit run, even as her health deteriorated through the mid-1960s. By that point, the illness had become severe enough that she could no longer tour consistently. She left the group entirely by the late 1960s, her body unable to sustain the demands of professional performing. She married Marvelette Billy Gordon of the Contours in 1965 and largely stepped away from public life. Georgiana Tillman died on January 6, 1980. She was 35 years old. The Marvelettes had long since dissolved. The teenager who sang on Motown's first ever #1 pop record had spent her adult years out of public view, fighting an illness that had quietly ended everything. The Beatles added, "Please Mr. Postman," to their live set list almost immediately upon hearing it. The Carpenters took it back to #1 in 1975. Georgiana Tillman was 35 years old when she died, having sung on the record that started everything. Sickle cell disease and lupus are each brutal on their own. Tillman managed both while maintaining a professional performing career. That fact deserves to be said plainly. You better wait a minute. Oh. Number 10, Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard started the Supremes, not Diana Ross, not Berry Gordy. Florence Ballard, who pulled the original members together as teenagers in Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects, held the auditions, and chose the name Supremes from a list when they needed to change it from the Primettes. That stings like a bee. In 1960, when Ballard was 17, she was raped at knife point after being separated from her brother at a Detroit party. The assault left deep psychological damage that the Motown system never addressed, and the entertainment industry of the early 1960s was entirely unequipped to handle. By the time Where Did Our Love Go hit #1 on the Hot 100 in the summer of 1964, Ballard was already struggling with that unaddressed trauma, and already watching Berry Gordy systematically reposition the group around his personal relationship with Diana Ross. Motown fired Florence Ballard from the Supremes in July 1967, the day after her 24th birthday. She sued Motown for $8.7 million in unpaid royalties and lost. Her ABC record singles failed to chart. Motown had a documented practice of discouraging radio stations from playing former artists. She lost her house to foreclosure. Her marriage broke apart. By 1972, she had applied for welfare. Florence Ballard died of cardiac arrest in February 1976. She was 32 years old. She had recently gotten sober, recently bought a new home, and recently begun recording again. A comeback was just beginning to take shape. The woman who had founded the most successful girl group in music history died on public assistance at 32. The character of Effie White in Dreamgirls, the role Jennifer Hudson won an Oscar for playing in 2006, is based directly on her life. And all your promises, baby. Dreamgirls is the version most people know, but Florence Ballard's real story does not end with a standing ovation. It ends with a 32-year-old woman who had recently gotten sober and died before her comeback ever happened. If you're locked into this one, most people scrolling past these songs have no idea what it took to make them. We digs that history back up, one record at a time. The subscribe button costs nothing, and it means you won't miss the next one. Number 9, Mary Wells. Mary Wells walked into Berry Gordy's life at 17 years old with a song she'd written for Jackie Wilson and an extraordinary voice. Gordy signed her on the spot, had her record the song herself, and it climbed to the top of the R&B chart. She became Motown's first nationally significant female artist, carrying the label into pop radio before the Supremes had their commercial breakthrough. She toured with the Beatles in 1964, and the Beatles told the world she was their favorite American singer. My Guy, produced by Smokey Robinson, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1964. It was Motown's first #1 pop single. Not a top 10 hit, not a crossover hit. The very first time Motown reached the top of mainstream American pop, that was Mary Wells. She was 21 years old. Then her husband Herman Griffin convinced her to leave. He pointed out that her original Motown contract, signed when she was a minor, could now be legally challenged. He steered her toward a $500,000 deal with 20th Century Fox Records that promised film roles. Neither the money nor the acting career materialized. Griffin also pressured her into multiple abortions that, by her own account, were not fully her choice. Wells spent 3 decades watching Motown go forward without her. In 1990, she was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer and had no health insurance. The disease destroyed her voice. Friends organized fundraisers. Bruce Springsteen gave $10,000. Rod Stewart, $10,000. Diana Ross, $15,000. It wasn't enough. Mary Wells died in July 1992 at 49. Unable to speak above a whisper, having sued Motown for unpaid royalties the year before. Motown settled for a 6-figure sum. She never received real justice. Mary Wells understood her own value. She had given Motown its first #1 pop single. She still could not protect what she had built. The contract she signed as a minor and the husband who exploited it cost her everything. Number 8. James Jamerson.
Brother, there's far.
James Jamerson played the bass line on My Girl. He played the bass line on Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I Heard It Through the Grapevine. What's Going On? Dancing in the Street. For Once in My Life. And Reach Out, I'll Be There.
Too many of you dying.
He was the primary bassist on 30 Billboard #1 hits. Bass Player magazine named him the greatest bass player in history in 2017.
Father, we don't need.
He received no credit on virtually any of them. Motown did not list session musician credits on releases until 1971.
Got to find a way to bring some.
By the time Marvin Gaye acknowledged the incomparable James Jamerson on the sleeve of What's Going On, the first time his name appeared on any major Motown release, Jamerson was already being left behind by a label that had moved from Detroit to Los Angeles. He followed Motown to Los Angeles but found the session market oversaturated. Work dried up, his alcoholism worsened severely, and in a devastatingly symbolic act, Motown did not invite Jamerson to perform at its 25th anniversary concert in 1983. They wouldn't even allow him backstage. The man whose bass lines literally defined the sound they were celebrating could not get through the door. That same year, his prized 1962 Fender Precision bass, the instrument he called the Funk Machine, the one that played on virtually every Motown hit of the 1960s, was stolen. He never got it back. James Jamerson died on August 2, 1983, of liver failure, heart failure, and pneumonia. He was 47 years old, out of work, unknown to the public, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2000.
Don't punish me with brutality.
17 years after his death, the bass lines James Jamerson played are still in the recordings. They still play every time someone streams those songs.
What's going on? Yeah, what's going on?
The man who played them died at 47, largely unknown to the public, his instrument stolen, barred from the anniversary celebration of the very music he had created. Number 7. Tammi Terrell. 6. Paul Williams.
As you know it, he's gone.
Paul Williams was a founding member of the Temptations and the architect of their early stage persona, the man who created their choreography, sang lead on Don't Look Back, and held live performances together with sheer physical presence when other elements weren't cooperating. He was, in the truest sense, the group's structural spine. His alcoholism began affecting his performances in the late 1960s and became increasingly severe through the early 1970s. He was eventually replaced as lead vocalist and then removed from live performances entirely. In an act of genuine loyalty, the other Temptations kept him on the payroll for years afterward, paying him a weekly salary simply because he was a founding member who needed to eat. On August 17, 1973, Paul Williams was found dead in his car in Detroit, just a few blocks from Hitsville, USA. He had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was 34 years old. He had struggled for years with alcoholism, with the physical and psychological toll of being removed from the group he had helped build, and with the financial collapse that followed both. Melvin Franklin, his closest friend among the Temptations, reportedly broke down completely upon hearing the news. The group was shattered. They performed that night because they had no choice. The show had to go on. A founding member of one of the most successful groups in music history was found in a car on a Detroit street at 34, just blocks from where the whole thing began. What happened to Paul Williams was a failure of the people and systems around him that the Motown machine was never designed to address. Paul Williams choreographed the Temptations. He taught them how to move, how to command a stage, how to be the thing they became. The Motown machine never had a mechanism to protect the people who built it from the inside. Paul Williams is among the clearest evidence of that. Number 5. David Ruffin. David Ruffin arrived at the Temptations in 1964 and immediately transformed the group. His voice, raw, ragged, rooted in Mississippi gospel, was completely distinct from the smooth tenor tradition the group had been building on. When Ruffin sang lead on My Girl in early 1965, taking the Smokey Robinson and Ronald White song into a register of real vulnerability, it became the Temptations' first #1 pop hit and one of the most enduring soul records in history. By 1968, Ruffin's behavior had become impossible to manage. He demanded his name above the group on promotional materials, David Ruffin of the Temptations, while arriving late to sessions, skipping shows, and becoming increasingly unstable. In June 1968, the Temptations fired him. What followed was a solo career that produced genuine hits. Walk Away from Love was a top 10 pop single in 1975, but which was fundamentally unable to sustain itself against his cocaine addiction. His manager, cousin, and various associates repeatedly defrauded him of substantial sums. Legal disputes piled up. The hits stopped coming. On June 1st, 1991, David Ruffin was found in a crack house in Philadelphia, barely conscious. He died later that night of a cocaine overdose. He was 50 years old. The man who sang lead on My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and I Wish It Would Rain, records that will be played as long as music is played, was found in a crack house at 50. The Temptations learned about his death while on tour in the United Kingdom. Eddie Kendricks, hearing the news, reportedly sat in complete silence for a very long time. David Ruffin's voice is one of the greatest instruments in the history of American popular music. That is not a contested claim. The way the music industry treated the man attached to that voice remains one of its most sustained and documented institutional failures. Number 4. Eddie Kendricks. Eddie Kendricks was the falsetto voice of the early Temptations, the high, bell-clear tone that carries "The Way You Do the Things You Do," "Get Ready," and "Just My Imagination" into their emotional registers. When the group shifted to Norman Whitfield's harder psychedelic soul era in the late 1960s, Kendricks found himself increasingly sidelined in favor of Dennis Edwards and David Ruffin. In 1971, he left the group to pursue a solo career. That career produced his biggest moment, "Keep On Truckin'," released in 1973, hit number 1 on the Hot 100, and became one of the defining commercial sounds of the year. Boogie Down was another top 5 hit in 1974. Then the commercial momentum collapsed, and what came next was a years-long battle with Motown over unpaid royalties. Money Kendricks believed he was owed from his time both with the Temptations and as a solo artist. The dispute was financially devastating. According to multiple accounts, Kendricks was forced to sell his house to fund the lawsuit. He eventually rejoined the Temptations for reunion tours in an attempt to rebuild, but the financial damage had been done. In 1992, Kendricks was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had been a heavy smoker for decades. A leg was amputated. He underwent chemotherapy. He died on October 5, 1992, at 52 years old, in Birmingham, Alabama, with his family around him. The royalties battle had cost him his home. The falsetto voice that defined an era of the most successful vocal group in soul music history was gone at 52. He had heard about David Ruffin's death in a crack house a year earlier and reportedly sat in complete silence. Eddie Kendricks sold his house to fund a lawsuit against Motown for money he was owed. He had given the Temptations their falsetto sound and given Motown a number 1 solo hit, and he had to sell his house to pursue what was legally his. Number 3. Damon Harris. I never got a chance to see him. Damon Harris joined the Temptations in 1971 at just 18 years old, one of the youngest members in the group's history. My daddy died. Recruited as a direct replacement for David Ruffin after a period of lineup uncertainty, Harris brought youth and energy to the group at exactly the moment they were entering what would become their final run of major hits. Papa was a Rolling Stone. In late 1972, the Temptations released "Papa Was a Rolling Stone," a Norman Whitfield epic, nearly 12 minutes on the album version, built around a bass line and horn arrangement that locked together into one of the most hypnotic productions in Motown's history. It hit number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts simultaneously, winning 3 Grammy Awards including Record of the Year. Damon Harris sang on that record. He was 20 years old. By 1975, he had left the Temptations under acrimonious circumstances. A solo career produced minor regional success, but never broke nationally. Drug addiction consumed his finances, his relationships, and his health through the late 1970s and 1980s.
Some bad talk going around town saying that Papa had 3 outside.
He was diagnosed HIV positive. Drug charges added legal debt to an already devastated life. Damon Harris died on February 18, 2013. He was 60 years old. He died homeless, without stable housing, in Baltimore, Maryland. Tell me the truth. The Grammy he had won as a 20-year-old for a Record of the Year did not translate into financial security, professional support, or any of the safety nets that should have been available to a man who had contributed to Motown's biggest award at 18 years old. He died on the street. The music industry's official story of the Temptations rarely lingers long on what happened to Damon Harris.
Papa called himself a jack of all trades.
The detail that stays with you about Damon Harris is the distance between the two ages. He was 20 years old when he sang on a Record of the Year. He was 60 when he died homeless in Baltimore. 40 years between those two facts. The Grammy did not help.
Say Papa would beg, borrow, steal to pay.
Number 2, Junior Walker. Like every performance was his absolute last. Gordy reportedly wasn't sure what to do with him. Walker didn't fit the Motown template of polished, choreographed groups in sequin suits. He was the deliberate opposite of that, and it worked. Shotgun, released in February 1965. It is a pure adrenaline document. An instrumental vocals, Do the Boomerang, Shake and Finger Pop, I'm a Roadrunner, and How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, that kept Walker on the charts through the late 1960s. The music industry wrote its official history of the Motown era. 1971 is repeatedly ranked as the greatest album ever made by Rolling Stone. It sold millions of records. The money went... On April 1, 1984, the day before Marvin Gaye's 45th birthday, his father shot him in their Los Angeles home during a violent argument. He died later that day. An autopsy confirmed his father had struck him before the shooting. Sr. was initially charged with first-degree murder. The charge was eventually reduced after doctors confirmed he had a brain tumor affecting his behavior. He received a suspended sentence. Marvin Gaye owed the IRS more than $5 million when he died. He owned almost nothing of what he had created. He died at 44. The day before, he would have turned 45. The recoupment system meant every expense Motown attributed to Gaye's account had to be repaid before royalties began. A low rate and a rigged ledger.